Well, you cannot say that we didn't call it on this channel. We've been talking about it over the past 24 hours, and the 49ers have indeed traded for the Dallas Cowboys for Osa Odighizuwa, the defensive tackle who's quite the pass rusher. 2 years ago with Micah Parsons at his side, and he's going to have Nick Bosa at his side with the 49ers. Osa Odighizuwa ranked top 5 in pass rush win rate amongst defensive tackles. Two top 5 numbers in pressures, 60 of them, and then top 5 with a very, very nice pass rush win rate. The 49ers very clearly have needed to bolster the pass rush on the interior. They've been way more interested in this than in adding an edge rusher. They could still add an edge rusher in the draft, or they could sign Joey Bosa. More fun stuff might be coming. But Jordan Schultz was the first to report that the 49ers are trading for the 27-year-old Osa Odighizuwa. So why don't we put him onto the 49ers roster? Why don't we have some fun with this? Well, maybe I could tell you guys the financial terms first, because this guy, he's only 27 years old, so he's still under contract through 2028. Dallas just signed him to a 4-year, $80 million deal last season. So the 49ers are going to inherit this contract for Osa Odighizuwa. Both teams win because Dallas needed to get under the salary cap, and they are going to save $4.75 million of 2026 space. 49ers simply inherit the contract, not this column. That was paid out by Dallas. So Dallas paid out the $20 million signing bonus at the start. 49ers take over 16.25 in base salary, and then they take over 500,000 in per game roster bonus. Guaranteed salary, $16.75 million this year. And then it's not guaranteed past this season, but you're probably going to keep him if he plays well. Still a young player, $20 million in 2027, $20 million in 2028. Fits for the 49ers. We can toss him onto the roster now. The 49ers have given up a third-round pick for Osa Odighizuwa. They still have 4 fourth-round picks because of 3 compensatory selections given to them in this draft. So San Francisco no longer with a third-rounder, but 4 fourth-round picks. They can probably trade back into the third round if they want to. 6 draft picks left, but we talk a lot about saying, hey, this guy is a sure thing, right? Osa Odighizuwa is a sure thing. He has produced over the course of his NFL career. And now the 49ers, who had a league low 4.5 sacks from their interior pass rushers last year and a league low 20 sacks from their defensive line, the 49ers have bolstered both of those weaknesses. You know what? The 49ers have now added 2 foundational pillars during this free agency week. The second foundational pillar is going to be here in Osa Odighizuwa. So I think we can move CJ here. We're going to move Evan Anderson. I'm going to have Evan Anderson not making the team anymore. I think this bumps Evan Anderson down to a practice squad projection. We're going to move CJ West over into the second string for the 49ers. And we're going to add Osa Odighizuwa right next to Nick Bosa. You know, I'm actually going to put Osa Odighizuwa in this spot. The reason why is because I want to separate him a little bit from Nick Bosa on the 49ers depth chart. You have defensive end, defensive tackle, defensive tackle, defensive end. And Osa Odighizuwa is a foundational pillar of this football team. Look at what the 49ers have done in short order in this free agency. The 49ers have added Osa Odighizuwa. He gets the yellow highlight as a load-bearing wall of this roster. They've added Mike Evans. He gets the yellow highlight as a load-bearing wall of this roster. The hope is that Mike Evans hands the torch over to Ricky Pearsall maybe in just a year. But for now, the future Hall of Famer Mike Evans at the X receiver position, he's the foundational pillar that Brandon Ayuk should have been for this football team. And the 49ers have been looking to have 2 of these guys at defensive line. One end, that's Bosa. One tackle, that is Osa Odighizuwa. Has been with the Dallas Cowboys. He worked with Matt Eberflus last year, 49ers assistant defensive head coach. He was the defensive coordinator of Dallas in 2025. So staff connection there. 49ers going to run the 4-3. We know this. I mean, I've been talking about it for several days now, ever since the NFL Combine. John Lynch said they would make tweaks especially to the outside, to the profile that you look for from your defensive ends / outside linebackers in a 3-4. They're going to be more 5-man fronts, but they needed a pass rusher on the inside, and that guy was going to be rooted in a 4-3 type of philosophy. Because even though Osa's strength is not run defense, the 49ers have already loaded up on run defenders. Alfred Collins, CJ West, Michael Williams can slide inside. He's been good against the run. They needed a pass rusher. That's what was missing for this team on the inside. That's what Osa Odighizuwa is going to bring San Francisco. This move made too much sense. Dallas needed to get under the cap. They already have Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark. They paid a third defensive tackle earlier this week. So they had way too much money invested into the defensive tackle position. They were changing schemes from the Eberflus 4-3 to more of a 3-4. Again, Odighizuwa fits better in that 4-3 as the pass rushing specialist defensive tackle playing that 3 technique position. It just made too much sense to move him over to the 49ers, who didn't have a surplus in interior pass rushers. Dallas had too many, the 49ers had too little, and the 49ers and the Cowboys make yet another trade. Back in 2023, Trey Lance to Dallas for a 4th-round pick. Now Osa Odighizuwa to the 49ers for a 3rd-round pick. We can all go all the way back, of course, to the 1992 season when the 49ers traded Charles Haley to the Cowboys. The beneficiaries of that trade were the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe the beneficiaries of these ones are going to be the 49ers. Now, there's still questions about the rest of the defensive line. It's clear the 49ers are going to be staying in a 4-3 base. Does that mean they keep Bryce Huff? Decision due by Friday. Not really. The roster bonus is due Friday. They could keep Bryce Huff. They could pay him $1 million roster bonus and then figure out what to do beyond that. He's going to have some trade value for Robert Saleh potentially if they don't want to keep him. But that's a different position than Osa Odighizuwa. All right, so we got to send off some tweets here. And I got to answer some of your questions. But as I send off some of the tweets, you guys can follow me working as Osa Odighizuwa is a 49er. Let's get him up on the screen again. Let's get that picture. Jordan Schultz reported it first. So we should put up his relative athletic score. If you want to know a little bit more about Osa, very quick player. It's going to be a lighter defensive tackle. The 49ers already have their big guys in Alfred Collins and in CJ West, 320 plus pounds. Here you're going to get 288 pounds. You're going to get somebody who had a quick 3-cone, who had a quick short shuttle, who's able to move. And that's what you want out of a pass rusher. You have somebody who has cracked the top 5 in pass rushing win rate. And not so long ago, in 2024, the key is to have the force multiplier Nick Bosa back. That's going to be the 49ers' biggest addition of 2025 is Nick Bosa. That's above all else, that's what you need to have because he draws attention just like Micah Parsons drew attention for Dallas in 2024. That's going to open up some space on the inside for somebody like Osa Odighizuwa to work one-on-one against guards, to use the way he can fire off the ball, to use the athleticism. Again, 60 pressures in 2024. That's no small amount for a defensive tackle. This is way, way more juice than the 49ers have had in quite some time. They felt the need for this back in 2023 when they signed Javon Hargrave, but Hargrave went for $21 million a year, and obviously he was older. He was already 30 years old, and the injuries started to catch up to Hargrave, and he never was really, and they didn't have run stoppers either at the time. That was another big problem for the 49ers, especially after 2023. They got rid of Eric Armstead. So, I mean, it all turned into a situation where the 49ers did not get their bang for the buck with Javon Hargrave, a declining player. They get Osa Odighizuwa here in his prime. And what they've done here is they've built the foundation the right way. They have made sure to build up the run defense first. Again, drafting Michael Williams, drafting Alfred Collins, 320 plus pounds, drafting CJ West, 320 plus pounds. Run defense specialists have set the table for the 49ers to now plug the hole as far as pass rush goes. And that's where Osa Odighizuwa was 60 pressures. Mike had a graphic earlier today. Mike, if you could send the one that you sent earlier today that showed Osa ranked 2nd, I think it was in quarterback hits with 20. We could put that one up on the screen. Another Cowboys trade. Dallas is trading Solomon Thomas, the former high 49ers draft pick, to the Tennessee Titans, where he's going to rejoin Robert Saleh. Saleh coached Solomon Thomas in both San Francisco after the 49ers drafted him number 3 overall in 2017, and also with the New York Jets, late round pick swap over there. So also the 49ers third round pick that they're sending the Cowboys, the 49ers were good this year. They made the playoffs. It's the 27th pick of the third round. So it's fairly low in that third round. Not quite a fourth rounder, but it is fairly low there. All right, I want to show you guys some Osa Odighizuwa stats from last year when he didn't have Micah Parsons. Now, a big criticism of this, or I guess a concern, it's hard to like criticize or praise a trade. I can only talk about the strategy until it actually plays out. But the big concern here, I think, for people will be, well, how's this guy's a run defender? So that I say it doesn't really matter when you already have run defenders on your roster. That's the calculation that the 49ers have made. You could see right here, for Osa Odighizuwa, 19th in the league in hurries, 2nd in hits amongst defensive tackles, 6th in total pressures. And this was last season when the Dallas Cowboys did not have Micah Parsons. They traded him away to the Green Bay Packers. So Osa was still a very disruptive player, even before or even after Dallas got rid of Micah Parsons. And I think that's promising for the 49ers. That's why this guy can be a pillar that you could lean on. Maybe he's going to be a force multiplier getting after the passer. But when he'll have Nick Bosa in there coming off the ACL tear on the outside, that is when the 49ers can truly cook. Remember, this was the least productive pass rush in the entire league. It's also going to be a weak draft class at defensive tackle. So it makes a whole lot of sense for the 49ers to pounce now. We have to give a lot of credit, round of applause to Mike, who's the producer of this channel. He was all over this before the national media was over it. He was all over this before the Dallas media was on it. Mike said the 49ers, yesterday, he said it 24 hours ago, before any reports came out. Mike, on this channel, this is why this is the best 49ers channel. It's not because of me. It's because the man behind the scenes. It's because of Mike. Mike on this channel said the 49ers are going to go after Osa Odighizuwa. It makes too much sense. Dallas is a surplus of defensive tackles. The 49ers clearly are going after a defensive tackle. They were in the sweepstakes for John Franklin Myers, who ended up going to Tennessee, to Robert Saleh. They're going to go get Osa Odighizuwa. Mike said it. Then the Dallas media probably saw it because I retweeted it. And then the Dallas media wrote an article about it. And then today, less than 24 hours later, you have the 49ers trading for Osa Odighizuwa. So if you want the actual inside information, we've got Mike on our team over here. So why don't you guys all subscribe? Mike, if you want to join the show, Mike, I don't know what Mike is doing right now behind the scenes, but if he wants to join the show, even if it's just audio only, feel free. But if you can't, then don't worry about it. I know that Mike might be busy at home. Make sure that you do hit that sub button, though, as the 49ers do pick up Osa Odighizuwa. Wow. My editor, Kerry, said you nailed it. Osa Odighizuwa to the 49ers. Mike nailed it. I got to give Mike credit right now. So we will get a film session on Osa Odighizuwa. So I want to show you guys the relative athletics score. I think that Mike sent it to me a little bit earlier. I probably still have it because we've been talking about this guy so much over the course of the past 24 hours that we already have all the information ready. Here it is. This is who the 49ers picked up. As you can see, this is coming out of the draft, UCLA product. Go Bruins. I didn't go to UCLA, but I support the old Pac-12. You could see you got really good marks down here at the bottom when it comes to vertical jump and broad jump. He's very athletic. He's very explosive. He's got a good short shuttle time. Didn't measure anything in the 40, but I don't care about a 40-yard dash for a guy who's over 280 pounds. He just needs to operate in short bursts, and his 10-yard split was solid. Relative athletics score 7.77 in a 10-yard split. We're looking at the shuttle. That's going to be change of direction. We're looking at the broad jump and the vertical jump. That's going to be explosion at the line of scrimmage. Osa Odighizuwa has all of that stuff, and it is translated to the tape. I mean, this is somebody who has gotten to the quarterback. He's averaged well over 50 pressures a year. The 49ers didn't have anything near that type of productivity last year at the defensive tackle position. And Osa Odighizuwa is going to be able to bring that. So for Raheem Morris and for Matt Eberflus, the biggest weakness of this defense has been addressed. For Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers offensive coaching staff, the biggest weakness has been addressed. That's going to be my first tweet right here. As we're looking at the 49ers roster, you can see, look at all these foundational pillars that the 49ers have. It hadn't taken a lot in free agency. It took a third-round pick, a low third-round pick, and obviously a commitment of $16.75 million to Osa Odighizuwa, but it hadn't taken a lot for the 49ers to show up and address their two biggest weaknesses. It hasn't, here, I'm tweeting right now, taken long for the 49ers to address their two most glaring weaknesses in this free agency period. Lack of separation, ex-receiver, Mike Evans for $16.2 million guaranteed. Lack of interior pass rush, Osa Odighizuwa for $16.75 million guaranteed, and a low third-round draft pick. John Lynch remains one of the most aggressive NFL general managers in terms of making trades and paying out substantial salaries. Last season, actually, wait, not last season. We'll see. Yeah, last season. Last season, the 49ers made 4 trades. On the first day of the 2026 league year, Lynch has already made another big splash. So a lot of people who don't know much about what they're talking about will say that John Lynch is not aggressive, or that the 49ers sit on their hands. That it couldn't be any further from the truth. And it looks like Mike has joined the room. We're going to welcome Mike in with audio only. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, he's there. Can you guys hear Mike? I think you could all hear Mike. Let's see if they say yes in the chat section. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear Mike in the chat section. Anyway, Mike, I'm talking about the perception that is out there with John Lynch and the 49ers front office. It's like fans get really restless and they're like, the 49ers, they're just sitting on their hands. They don't make any moves. They don't spend money. They've made, I think, more trades than any other front office since Lynch and Shanahan joined, at least more big trades. This qualifies as one, and they've spent more money than anyone else. And, I was just laying around, hanging out with Lombardi yourself, and you called me, and this reminds me of some of the other big moves that the 49ers have made in recent years.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of due to the nature of them being extremely aggressive, but extremely aggressive in a way that makes sense for them. There's a connection typically with all the players that they typically trade for. If it's Christian McCaffrey, if it's Osei with Uberflus being his DC last year. So I think it twofolds. We had a big need. There was a connection. Typically, that's a big requirement for the 49ers making a big trade.
Yes, and the Eberflus connection was huge. I think that we've been waiting for clues regarding what the 49ers would do as far as constructing this defense under Raheem Morris, since he's run a bunch of different schemes over the course of his time as an NFL defensive coordinator and as a head coach. And the first, big clue came when John Lynch spoke at the NFL Combine a couple weeks ago when he said, we are a 4-3 base team, but we want to expand into some 3-4 principles. But he only mentioned the outside linebacker defensive end position. He didn't say anything about defensive tackles. And then the 49ers went after John Franklin Myers, who Saleh went after and got for Tennessee. And we know Saleh's a 4-3 guy. So by that, Mike, I think we knew that the Niners wanted a good 4-3 pass rushing defensive tackle. And you're the one that predicted this. You're the one that figured out that the 49ers were going to get after Osa Odighizuwa before anybody else did. So I'm curious to know what really tipped you off.
Yeah, so I have a good friend who is who has a good information on the Cowboys side, and the way that they were constructing their defense, they were really attacking the defensive tackle. They just signed a nose tackle from the Chargers. They had just traded for Quinn Williams. They have Clark. They had a lot in that room, and the Cowboys had a lot of cap issues coming into this season, especially because of George Pickens being franchise tagged. So when you kind of see that there was a lot of additions, and this specifically high cost additions, you start to kind of pinpoint, okay, what are they going to do? Who's potentially going to be moved? And kind of just some discussions I had. We were just kind of going through the Cowboys roster, and it just made too much sense where it connected the dots with Osei being traded to the 49ers, especially with the 49ers trying to sign JFM, who's ended up signing with the Titans. The 49ers are being very, very aggressive. And it's something that we pinpointed out right at the beginning of the offseason, that the defensive tackle position was one of the bigger issues on that defense, especially when Nick Bosa went down, Mikal went down, and the three spots that we kind of outlined were defensive tackle, linebacker, and safety. And we've attacked one. We'll see what happens with the linebacker. And I think moving forward, as we switch to what we potentially could do next, it's going to be that safety spot. And we'll see where we end up signing. I'd assume we're going to look for value, which I think that's what you're supposed to do in these situations, is maximize. If it's a trade, you're not giving up a whole lot, like a late round third, or you're finding a signing like Mike Evans at a minimal cost.
Yeah, and I mean the two big signings so far. You're talking so much about the need at that defensive tackle position, Mike. I'm going to open up the roster again. There were two glaring ones, and that's what I just tweeted. I also just tweeted something that credited you because you were all over this. But they had a massive need at wide receiver, specifically the X. They needed not only a separator, but they needed somebody who created gravity for them that would take the safety over toward the split end side, because that's why Christian McCaffrey didn't have a lot of running room last year. They were not. A, they didn't block well on the perimeter, but B, they just didn't draw defenders out there because they didn't have a true X receiver forcing defenders to account for that side of the field. So Mike Evans at a very reasonable cost, $14 million a year, $16.2 million guaranteed, was the first move of free agency. Well, it worked out perfectly. And then, as you said, that second big hole, they had only 4.5 sacks from all their defensive tackles combined last year. And guys like Collins and CJ West, really promising young players, but the 49ers had so many problems to fix coming out of 2024 when they couldn't stop the run, that they had to focus first on getting Collins and West, who were two run stoppers, before they could go back to the pass rushing well. Remember the guys they released last offseason? They released Javon Hargrave, who just signed with the Packers for a lot of money. I think he's older and he's worse than Osa Odighizuwa, but they released Hargrave, they released Malik Collins, they released Leonard Floyd. They, basically said, we need run stoppers first, because it doesn't matter if you rush the passer if you can't stop the run. So they spent last off season building the foundation with run stoppers, and now they can add the whatever bells and whistles you want to add to the building. That's the pass rushing. And now they have the nice gadgets. And I think that's Osa Odighizuwa that's going to be able to take this 49ers defense to the next level.
And I think that pinpoints that the reset on defense was not a 1 year fix. It was going to take a couple off seasons to put the players, especially since you're resetting cost on defense. You needed to do it over 2 off seasons, and we'll see what happens the rest of the way. I mean, could the 49ers even bring in Joey Bosa and just completely bring in the Osa brothers, have Osa, Nick, and Joey, and make
Osa,
it, and
Bosa, and Bosa. Osa,
yeah,
Bosa squared.
could be in an insane confusion for the fans. But I think it's the right approach. I think it's a good point now to kind of fix those holes, especially when it's an obvious issue. I don't know if they'll necessarily fix the linebacker core. I mean, as much as I think there was a lot of hate going to D Winters, we'll see him in a second year of potentially starting. Like you said, you had Nick Martin.
Well, maybe Martin. Yeah, who knows? Maybe he takes a step. And
Yeah, and
we don't
I
know what
think,
Raheem Morris thinks of these guys yet, right?
and I'm curious if D fits more in the Ellis role. He in college was extremely successful blitzing, and so maybe with the new structure, how they use their linebackers, it fits better than how Salo is using their linebackers. So we just don't know how this will play out. But I think it's a good representation that the 49ers have constantly invested in the linebacker group, just not early picks, and I think that's exactly how you should do it. I just think the next point is going to be safety. You have to bring something in because you can't just rely on Brown and Mustafa.
Yeah, that's one of my positions of big concern for the 49ers. And I think safeties, a lot of people will say linebacker, the Mike is the quarterback of the defense. And that obviously, there's a parallel there with the radio in the helmet. But I actually think that safety, when you talk to any defensive coordinator, might hold more of that role. Linebacker might be the chief communicator, but the guy that sees everything in front of him is the safety, right? And the safeties, a lot of it's nonverbal, but if their communication is not on point, then the rest of the defense can really fail. And I'm wondering, who does Raheem Morris want back there as his chief communicating safety? Especially somebody with a DB coach's background like Raheem Morris. I mean, Raheem was in the position room with John Lynch back in Tampa Bay, right? Raheem Morris was an assistant DB coach, and Mike Tomlin was the head DB coach. Raheem sees the game, I think, through the eyes of the DB. And that's going to make it very important that he has a safety that he's comfortable with. Now, maybe Malik Mustafa works for Raheem Morris. I don't know. Maybe Marquise Siegel can develop there. Maybe even Jair Brown is somebody that he likes. I doubt it. I think that they want more speed there, but I just don't know at this point. And if you look at the roster, I have it up on the screen, there really is one more spot on the projected 53 for another safety.
Yeah, and if you look at the Falcons last year, they hit on a safety Y, I believe in the third or fourth round, and he was up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. So it's possible they take that route in this class. There are some good safeties. I'm not sure if they'll hit on them early. We just don't seem to value them in the draft very early, and then we don't necessarily give them long-term contracts. So it'd be interesting to see if maybe we shift that process under Raheem Morris. With John Lynch being a safety himself, hitting on, it seems like they've been able to get value, like with Hufanga. They just have never been able to retain them outside of, I believe, Jimmy Ward. Was he extended under?
Yeah, they re-signed Jimmy Ward, I believe, in the 2021 offseason. But no, maybe it was earlier. I think 2019. It was actually earlier. About $11 million a year, I remember. And they loved him, even though he came in the previous regime. But obviously didn't bring him back Jaquiski Tart after he dropped the pick in the NFC Championship game. And Malik Mustafa, that ties into trades with the Cowboys. When they traded with Dallas in 2023, when they sent Trey Lance there, they got a 4th-round pick back, and they used that 4th-round pick on Malik Mustafa. So, and Malik was really good his rookie year, and then he tore his ACL at the very end. And I think last year was a tough year to judge him coming off the ACL. So we'll see what Malik looks like in 2020, 26. But you know what? Marquise Siegel, too. It's really tough to judge him because I thought he played really well in every single facet of the game except for playing the ball. Like he was in the right spot, but he just didn't play the ball well. But he would hit guys. He played the run well. He just, for whatever reason, when the ball was in the air, the 49ers are hoping that's a skill he can develop, and maybe it was just because everything was kind of moving too fast for him as a rookie. But he has a lot of tools that could make him a good player at that safety position.
You know what would be interesting? I think we have already our NASCAR set as long as we keep Huff, right? You'd
Yeah.
have Huff outside, McKell inside, Osei, and then Bosa. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a pretty good, NASCAR package. I think it's something that we'll be able to enforce this year. Hopefully, if they can stay healthy.
Well, yeah, let's look at the defensive line right here. And see, they did tender Okawanu today, so they want him back. I think Okawanu is a solid, he could be a 3-down rotational piece. Like, he could be in there on rundowns, he could be in there on pass downs if you're going through some injuries. So I think at a reasonable rate of under $5 million, it made a whole lot of sense to keep him around. But the other defensive ends, obviously Bosa, he's the force multiplier that you're counting on a return from Nick Bosa in 2026, and that's going to happen. And maybe you add a second Bosa. Maybe it's Bosa squared with Osa Odighizuwa also there on the inside. But the Michael Williams rotation is what's fascinating to me, because we know that they think of him and Keon White in the same way. These are guys that they think about rushing from the inside on some of these passing downs. Now, obviously, Odighizuwa, with what he can bring pressure-wise, he's going to be on the field in terms of a NASCAR package. So then you think about how are you going to align at the edge? It's probably going to depend on who you sign or add through the draft, unless Bryce Huff is your guy there. And then who takes that last pass rushing spot? At this point, I know Keon White's recovering from being shot in the ankle, but if he makes a full recovery, he might be a better pass rusher right now than Michael Williams. I think Michael's a great run defender. It's going to be fascinating to see how he continues to develop, but there is some intriguing talent here for the 49ers. I just don't know if they've got that pure 3-down edge outside of Nick Bosa on this team right now. Maybe Keon White is a reserve kind of guy in that role, but I think they might be willing to pay 10 to 13 million for Joey Bosa this year, or somebody of that caliber, unless they think they can get that in the draft.
Yeah, it's possible. There's some guys, especially with how we potentially might be looking for some tweeners at defensive end, some smaller guys who can pass rush. We'll see how that plays out. One note that I just want to point out, Mike Garofalo has tweeted, Dallas often sells that the Cowboys premium no state tax discount in negotiations. Osu left a lot more on the table and now heads to a high tax state. So
Oh God.
one note, if you can you put OC's contract? What's his guarantees after this season? I know he has the 16 million cap hit. I'm curious if the 49ers need to rework. Nothing. So they probably need to rework a deal. I'm not sure if they'll do it this year, but essentially,
it's
he
tough
would
for
need a
Osa because
rework.
he's under contract through 2028. It's always tougher to renegotiate something. Now, if he's a productive player, the 49ers will be happy to revisit it earlier. They revisited Fred Warner's earlier. But there could also be a gentleman's agreement here with the 49ers and Osa Odighizuwa. We know that you're coming to a higher taxed area. We know that it's tough because you're under contract through 2028. If this season goes well, don't worry. We'll take care of you through some more guarantees, through, I don't know what they would have to do, but as of right now, the 49ers are getting him at $16.75 million for this season. It's this column or this row right here, the 2026 row. And Dallas needed to do this to free up the cap space. We were wondering, we thought it was weird because we hadn't heard of a move that Dallas made to get under the cap, right? And now finally, this was the move for Dallas to get under the cap. I'm sure it was reported to the league earlier before we heard about it. But Dallas still has to take on the dead money, but it's less dead money hitting this year than they were scheduled to pay him. So they saved the $4.75 million. They needed to cleanse out $4 million to get under the cap. They do with the move. And now the 49ers take on this part, the $16.75 million.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some comments. People are asking like that they hope he's not Hargrave 2.0. He's better than Hargrave. He's younger, but he's also better as a run stopper than Hargrave. That was such a liability for Hargrave.
And they have run stoppers now. They didn't have run stop. They had Chase Young loafing it after Lions running back. So that's the point. Even if he's bad against the run, they have Collins and they have CJ West and they have Michael Williams and they have Nick Bosa. So
And he's cheaper.
yes, and he's cheaper and he's younger. I mean, this is one of those things like we circled this target, Osa Odighizuwa. And again, I credit you, but I agreed with you as soon as you said it, as soon as I looked into it, because it just made so much sense for the 49ers for so many ways. You're trading for a guy who's been very good in this league. We're talking about number 4 in terms of pressure rate, number 2 in quarterback hits, even without Micah Parsons last year. You're trading for a guy who is still in his physical prime and not a guy who's almost 30 years old. You got a couple seasons before he starts creeping up on 30, and that's in the realm of non-guaranteed money. The only guaranteed year is here. It's going to be the age 28 season. And I see a lot of people probably counting sacks. That's stupid. I mean, it is. I'm just going to say that point blank. If you're trying to count sacks for an interior defensive lineman and you're not looking at the pressure and the way that they're disrupting the pocket and the way that they can rush as a team player to set up the edge rushers coming around, then you're not going to understand the impact of this player. You're box score watching, and only casuals box score watch. If you want to look at the tape and you want to understand how the advanced stats really jive with the tape, then you'll understand that this guy had 60 pressures in one season, which is a lot for an interior defensive tackle. You'll understand that he was number 4 in pressure rate when he worked with Micah Parsons. He hit the quarterback 20 times last year without Michael Parsons. So the numbers are not an issue for Osa Odighizuwa. This guy gets to the quarterback. He hits the quarterback. That's what you need as a defense.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, sacks come as a unit. So as long as the unit is working, that'll come. More than likely, what you're looking for at a defensive tackle, if it's a high pressure rate on top of quarterback hits, those are the two things that kind of correlate, and will end up, somebody will eat. If it's Osa, if it's Bosa, if it's Michael, if it's Huff, if it's Joey, if we end up signing him, somebody will eat. You just need somebody to bring the pressure or take on doubles that will unlock somebody else. So that's what you're trying to build.
Yep.
Be disruptive.
Cool stuff, man. Cool stuff. We can take a look at the rest of the 49ers roster right now, and we can predict to see what they do next. I know we've already been talking a little bit about it, but I'm going to pop this back open on the screen so you can go ahead and take a look. I think safety, definite possibility. Now, the NFL draft is definitely going to be important for the 49ers. It is for every team. One spot that we can't forget about is punter. They need to re-sign Thomas Morstead. I know that that's going to happen. I would be shocked if it didn't, but you want to bring back that whole kicking operation. Safety, I really do think they might want to bring in a veteran unless they really like somebody in the draft, and they're just going to wait for that. I honestly think they're fine at corner. People were flirting with the idea of replacing Renardo Green, but that's a lot easier said than done, and he hadn't been terrible for the 49ers. I think corner was actually the strongest part of their defense last year. Upton Stout, especially, he brought the heat last year, and we'll see if Raheem blitzes with him a little bit more. Linebacker is that big question spot. We're waiting to see what Raheem thinks of these guys, what he thinks of Winters, what he thinks of Bethune. I guess the Trent Williams domino might be the next to fall. You know what, Mike, on a big picture team building scale, the 49ers are pushing chips in right now. They paid Osa Odighizuwa. They're spending a 3rd round pick on him. I know he's in his prime and he's got years under contract, but the Mike Evans move is pushing chips into the middle of the table. They're fortifying the offensive line behind Trent Williams with a couple of the moves that we saw the last 2 days for Vidarian Lowe and Brett Toth. I think those make the 49ers stronger at those depth spots that you really need. But we expect them to pay Trent Williams or figure out a way to keep him happy and keep him around. If you do that and you sign Mike Evans, who's going to be 33 to a short-term deal, and you keep Mac Jones, which I think it's obvious that they're going to keep, you are putting a lot of chips into the 2026 season.
Yeah. So the big part for me is kind of fixing the gaps in your roster. You're not going to know exactly how your roster plays out come week 1, come week 8, What you got to do is kind of fix the issues that you had the previous season. We're doing that separation at X, our defensive tackle, and you're not just bringing in overpaid players. You're bringing in guys who are, maybe undervalued at this point with the cost that they're being
Yeah.
paid at. So I think that's something that um, you're basically making a weakness into a strength, and then you put, like you said, put the chips in on the table. Come week one, come week eight, come the trade deadline. We'll see where the roster's at, and if they have to make a move, they'll have availability cap space wise and potential. You just don't know what injuries are going to occur, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm excited to see what Raheem Morris is going to actually speak and on this team eventually when he speaks. I think OTAs. I think that's going to be like a big part of where he sees the vision of the 49ers defense in 2026. I think that's important. We're starting to get crumbs, and I think it's coming together, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really, really fascinating to see how Raheem Morris continues constructing this 49ers defensive unit. I think that he's such a, I keep on talking about his adaptability as a defensive coordinator, and that means so, so much in terms of flexibility to combat some of these adaptable offenses. And I think that the 49ers will evolve with the outside linebacker, defensive end positions. I think they're going to have some 3-4 concepts to their defense. I think that they're going to stay in that 4-3 base, and then we'll see what the importance of the linebacker position and the safety position within all those parameters is. But this team, they have a franchise quarterback. He's one of the best in the entire league. Mike had to leave, which is okay. We're probably only going to be going here for a few more minutes. But Brock Purdy is one of the best QBs in the league. You take advantage of his prime, which is just now beginning. You want to build as strong of a defense as possible. Well, I think Mike is back now. I think.
Yeah,
I think he.
sorry.
Okay, I thought you. I already told people that you were leaving. Hopefully, they didn't get too discouraged. But I was just saying that the 49ers have one of the best QBs in the league. They're obviously making sure that they fortify him better than they did last year because they signed Mike Evans, and obviously the Trent Williams thing will work itself out here sooner rather than later. And now they've got to give Brock Purdy a healthier team and a better defense. And even if when they were fully healthy last year, I think that there was a big question about the interior pass rush. Their best interior pass rushers were defensive ends who were moving inside, right? Yetur Gross-Matos and company. And Michael Williams, but he wasn't even really much of a pass rusher his first year. He was more of a block gobbler, as I say, just a guy that takes up a bunch of double teams and was excellent at what he did, but they needed a little bit of extra juice. And I think they get a lot of extra juice with this move, with this trade for Osa Odighizuwa. Pass rush numbers cracking the top 5 in some instances for Osa. So, Mike, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I guess the big thing is health, right? That's the big thing. I feel pretty good with the roster. There's still some gaps that we've talked about. I know a lot of people are mentioning about the offensive line and the concerns there. And the big thing is really Pooney. In my opinion, he's got to stay healthy and have a big year. I think that's a pretty much key at that right guard spot. The left guard, we'll see how it plays out. I know we signed Brett, and we'll see if we sign Barch back. But I just think it's in a good spot. I feel pretty good overall on the roster. I think the keys are what we're doing at running back with Christian McCaffrey and his potential backup. If it's Jordan James, if Guerrero somehow gets a rollback on offense, it'll be interesting. So as we look forward into the next move that the 49ers are potentially doing, I think it's just depth at this point outside of safety.
Yeah. Outside of safety, I agree because with Caden Ellis off the board at linebacker, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you mentioned Brett Toth, Vidarian Lowe. They've got a backup at left guard, a strong interior offensive line backup coming from the Jeff Stoutland School of Offensive Linemen in Philadelphia. Army guy, cool story. And then Vidarian Lowe, who started 20 plus games, they've got a high end swing tackle. You don't go out and get a high end swing tackle, by the way, if you're just mailing it in for the season. And nobody rational has said that the 49ers are mailing it in. That's a lot of clickbait. It's been very clear that they think that, and they're right to say that they're in their championship window. They won 13 games in a roster reset year. I think a lot of people conveniently try to forget that fact. You win 13 games, you win a road playoff game, you beat the defending champions. They beat the Super Bowl champions on the road last year when they were reasonably healthy in week 1. So the 49ers are, they're ahead of schedule. And I hope everybody understands the plan now. It was run defense, purge, run defense build in 24, add on to the pass defense in 25. You've got one of the best quarterbacks in football in Brock Purdy. That's all you need to have confidence to build a strong team around him and to go for it. And I think the 49ers have done well here through the first 3 days of this week to set that up. Well, Mike, congratulations. We got 45 minutes. I got to write an article now for the San Francisco Standard. So great having you, man. It was good talking to you.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you later.
All right, guys. Thanks to Mike. Round of applause. You better give the subscription to the channel because of Mike. That was our producer, Mike. I guess joining on we should have had on the phone, John Lynch on the phone, Mike or Taza. No, just kidding. This was awesome. 24 hours ago, we were talking about this before anybody else, and then it happened. 49ers get Osa Odighizuwa. Big time addition for San Francisco via the trade market. We'll talk to everybody very soon.